Snow fell over Manhattan like crushed diamonds scattered across the night sky, turning Christmas Eve into something almost unreal. But for Lena Marlowe, standing outside the Plaza Hotel with her 4-year-old son pressed tightly to her chest, nothing about this night felt magical. Her breath came out in trembling clouds, mixing with the cold as she stared up at the glittering windows of the hotel's penthouse suite windows. She never expected to see her husband behind. Yet there he was. Chase Marlowe, her husband of 7 years. He wasn't meeting clients. He wasn't closing a year-end deal. He wasn't stuck in traffic or delayed by work emergencies like he always claimed. He was standing beside a woman Lena recognized instantly, the model-turned-influencer Vera Quinn, dressed in a gold satin gown that shimmered under the chandelier light. And as Lena watched from the snowy sidewalk, Chase leaned in close, too close, raising a tall flute of champagne toward Vera's lips. The two of them laughed, glowing in warmth and luxury, while Lena, forgotten and freezing, held the child they created together. Noah stirred in her arms, coughing softly. "Mommy, is Daddy coming?" he whispered. Lena swallowed hard. "Not tonight, sweetheart." Inside the penthouse, Vera turned her head. Her eyes landed directly on Lena, on the exhausted wife, standing alone under the falling snow. And instead of shame, Vera smiled. A slow, triumphant, almost cruel smile. She slid her hand up Chase's chest, kissed him deliberately, and whispered something that made him laugh louder. The kind of laugh Lena hadn't heard from him in years. Lena's fingers tightened around her son's coat. She stepped backward, her boots sinking into the snow. Something inside her broke, but something else awakened at the same time. A quiet, steady voice inside her chest saying, "Leave. Tonight, before he destroys you completely." A gust of freezing wind whipped her hair across her face. Lena turned away from the hotel lights, away from the betrayal pressed against the penthouse window, and pulled Noah securely into her arms. She didn't know where she would go. She had no money, no family, no safe place waiting for her. But she had one truth stronger than fear. She would not raise her child in a home where love had already died. And so, on Christmas Eve, Lena Marlowe disappeared into the snow. The wind cut through Lena's coat the moment she stepped away from the plaza, as if the city itself were warning her that the night would only get colder from here. Manhattan glowed in its Christmas brilliance, storefronts dressed in gold, Fifth Avenue shimmering beneath strings of white lights, but none of it touched her. Beauty meant nothing when betrayal was still ringing in her ears. Noah shivered, burying his face against her shoulder. "Mommy, can we go home?" Home. The word punched through her chest. Their apartment wasn't a home. It was a cage wrapped in expensive furniture. Chase never let her choose. It was a place where she walked on eggshells, where he used silence like a weapon, and schedule reminders like shackles. A place where even her phone and bank card were under his control. "No, sweetheart," she whispered, adjusting his jacket to shield him from the wind. "We're going somewhere safe." Safe was not a place she could picture yet. Her boots sank into the thickening snow as she crossed Central Park South. Cars hissed over slush. Strangers hurried by in festive coats, clutching shopping bags and Starbucks cups, unaware that a mother and child were quietly fleeing everything they knew. Lena's fingers were numb, but she kept walking, driven by instinct alone. Chase would be furious once he realized she wasn't at the apartment. He would call. He would shout. He would command her to come back. Except her phone, her only line to the world, was useless. The screen demanded the password Chase had changed. He liked having control over every part of her life, and tonight, that control left her stranded with no way to call a cab, a friend, or even 911 if Noah's breathing got worse. Her heart raced. Noah coughed again, a wheezing sound that tightened her entire body. "Hold on, baby. Mommy's right here." The snow grew heavier, swirling around them like a curtain. Lena tightened her grip on Noah and pushed upward through the path toward Central Park, hoping to cut across and reach the busier streets. She didn't care where she ended up, anywhere was better than standing still. Her mind replayed the image she couldn't escape. Chase, laughing with Vera, feeding her champagne as though Christmas Eve were a private celebration for two. Not a day meant for family. Not a night meant for warmth. She felt foolish, invisible. How long had he stopped seeing her? How long had she convinced herself that his coldness was temporary? A sudden gust of wind nearly knocked her sideways. Noah whimpered, and Lena steadied them both. She tried to calm him with soft humming, but her own voice trembled. "Mommy, my chest hurts," he whispered. Fear sharpened every instinct inside her. She couldn't wander in the cold anymore. She needed shelter, heat, help. But Manhattan was enormous, unforgiving, and she had no plan. Until headlights swept across her face. A dark SUV slowed beside them. The window rolled down. "Lena?" a familiar voice called. Her breath caught. "Mason," she whispered. And for the first time all night, hope flickered. The SUV's brakes hissed softly as it stopped beside the snow-covered sidewalk. Lena blinked through the wind, trying to understand whether the voice she heard was real or just a desperate illusion created by exhaustion. But when the passenger door opened and warm air spilled out, she saw him clearly. Dr. Mason Ellis. Tall, steady, unmistakably familiar, even after 10 years. He stepped toward her, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. "Lena? What are you doing out here with Noah? It's freezing, you could—" But he stopped mid-sentence when he saw Noah's pale face pressed against her shoulder. "Get in," Mason said. No hesitation, no questions. "Now." Was Naufli one it faced, everyone faced? Lena's legs trembled with relief as he guided her into the heated SUV. The warmth felt unreal, like stepping into another world after being trapped in the storm too long. Noah whimpered softly as Mason reached back to adjust the heater vents toward him. "Is he breathing normally?" Mason asked, already scanning the child's color and posture. Lena shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "He's been coughing, and he said his chest hurts. I didn't know what to do. My phone chase locked me out. I couldn't call anyone." Mason's jaw tightened. "Okay, I'm taking you both to Mount Sinai. He needs to be checked immediately." Then he looked at her again, really looked, and his voice softened. "You're freezing too. What happened, Lena?" She swallowed hard. Her lips were trembling so badly she could hardly speak. It's a long story." The SUV merged into traffic, lights reflecting across the windshield as the city's Christmas glow blurred into gold and silver streaks. "You don't have to explain now," Mason said gently. "Just hold on to Noah." But the truth pressed against her ribs like a weight. "I saw Chase," she whispered, "at the plaza, with a woman, with his mistress, on Christmas Eve." Her voice cracked. They were laughing, drinking champagne, and he didn't even care that we were standing outside in the cold. Mason's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Not aggressively, protectively. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You never deserved that. I'm 7." No one had said those words to her in years. For a moment, Lena felt her throat close with emotion. Noah coughed again, and Mason reached over to hand her a blanket from the back seat. "Wrap him in this. We're almost there." The city rushed by the glowing storefronts, the sparkling trees, the holiday crowds, all of it a cruel contrast to the fear rising in Lena's chest. She kept glancing down at Noah's face, willing him to stay awake, stay warm, stay with her. When the SUV turned into the hospital entrance, Mason parked directly at the emergency bay. "I've got you," he said, opening her door. "Both of you." And in that moment, under the harsh fluorescent lights, with snow melting in her hair, Lena realized something she hadn't felt all night. She wasn't alone anymore. Inside the emergency bay, everything moved quickly, nurses rushing forward, warm lights replacing the freezing darkness outside, and the soft beeping of machines filling the air. Mason carried Noah in his arms while Lena walked beside them, her legs unsteady from exhaustion and fear. "His breathing is shallow," Mason called to the triage nurse. "Possible cold-induced bronchospasm. Get respiratory ready." The nurse nodded, guiding them into a pediatric room. As soon as Noah was placed on the bed, a team surrounded him, attaching monitors and warming blankets. Lena hovered near the wall, terrified to get too close, terrified to look away. "Ma'am, he's stable," one of the nurses gently reassured her. "We're warming him up. His oxygen levels are responding." Lena pressed a trembling hand to her lips. For the first time since leaving the plaza, her body sagged with relief. Mason stepped closer. "He's going to be okay, Lena. You did the right thing by getting him here." She lowered into a chair, her soaked boots dripping onto the linoleum floor. "I didn't know where else to go. See. You came exactly where you needed to," Mason said, pulling another chair beside her. His voice was steady, the same calmness she remembered from college, the same calmness that once made her feel safe without understanding why. A silence stretched between them, not awkward but heavy with things unsaid. Then Mason asked quietly, "What really happened tonight?" Lena stared at her hands. They were red from the cold, shaking slightly. "I saw Chase with her," she whispered. "He didn't even pretend to hide it. And when I texted him, he told me not to ruin his night. He didn't ask where we were or if we were safe." She blinked hard. It felt like he'd already erased us. Mason's jaw tightened. "That's not just cruel, that's dangerous." Before she could respond, something slipped from her coat pocket and fell onto the floor, a wrinkled envelope, cream-colored and sealed. Mason picked it up. "This yours?" Lena frowned. I don't remember putting anything in my pocket." She turned the envelope over. The handwriting made her breath catch. "From your mother." Not her biological mother. Her foster mother, the one who raised her until she died when Lena was 17. Hands shaking, Lena opened it. Inside was a short letter and a folded document. The letter read, "Lena, my girl, if life ever becomes too heavy, go to the place I've left for you. It will give you choices when the world gives you none. It's a deed." Lena unfolded the document and gasped. "A deed to property in Vermont?" "Mason," she whispered. "What is this? Why did she never tell me?" He studied the document, eyebrows lifting. "Lena, this land is real, and depending on where it is, it could be worth something." Worth something. 2 words she hadn't felt connected to in years. Before she could say another word, a nurse returned. "His oxygen is stabilizing. He's asking for you." Lena's heart swelled. For the first time that night, hope didn't feel fragile. It felt possible. When Lena stepped into Noah's room, the lights were dimmed to a soft glow. The machines hummed quietly beside him, warming his small body under layers of heated blankets. His cheeks, once pale and cold, were beginning to regain a faint flush. "Mommy," he whispered, reaching a tiny hand toward her. She hurried to his bedside and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "I'm right here, sweetheart. You're safe. Mommy's not going anywhere." Mason stood near the foot of the bed, watching with gentle attentiveness. He didn't interrupt. He didn't push. He simply waited, something no one in her life had done in a very long time. When Noah drifted back to sleep, Lena stepped outside the room with Mason. The hallway felt quieter now, the chaos of the ER fading into a low hum behind them. "You should sit," Mason said softly. She tried to answer, but instead felt her knees buckle. Mason caught her by the shoulders before she could fall, guiding her to a bench along the wall. "You're exhausted," he said. "You've been carrying too much." And that was all it took. The tears came silent at first, then trembling, then uncontrollable. Lena covered her face with her hands, shaking as years of swallowed emotion spilled out. Mason sat beside her but didn't speak. He simply placed a steady hand between her shoulder blades, the warmth grounding her. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she finally choked out. "I thought if I just tried harder, if I stayed quiet and did everything Chase wanted, maybe he'd come back to me. Maybe he'd be the man he promised he'd be." Mason's brows drew together. "Lena, none of this is your fault. Isn't it?" she whispered. "He said I was holding him back, that I wasn't attractive enough, that no one would ever want me if he left." 8. Mason inhaled sharply, the kind of breath taken by someone trying not to show anger too quickly. "Lena, what he told you is emotional manipulation, cruel, and completely untrue." She looked up at him, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Then why does it feel true?" "Because you've been surviving, not living," he said. "Someone like Chase makes sure you believe the worst about yourself. It's how he keeps control." She swallowed hard. "I didn't know how bad it was until tonight. And destruction after, du threeness. What he did," Mason said carefully, "leaving you and Noah out there in that storm, that's neglect. That's dangerous. And honestly, that's something a court wouldn't ignore." The words startled her. A court. Custody. The reality she'd been too afraid to consider. "Mason, I don't have money. He controls everything. I don't even have access to my own bank card." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll find someone who can help. A lawyer who understands cases like this." "We?" she whispered. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "You're not alone in this." Before she could respond, a nurse approached them. "He's awake again," she said, "and he's asking for his mom." Lena wiped her tears, steadied her breath, and stood up. This time, She walked back to Noah's room, not as a woman breaking, but as a woman beginning to rebuild. While Lena sat beside Noah's hospital bed, stroking his hair as he slept peacefully, another part of Manhattan was glowing with a different kind of warmth. Crystal chandeliers, jazz music, and the artificial sweetness of people pretending their lives were perfect. Inside the Plaza penthouse, Chase Marlowe poured himself another glass of champagne. Finally, he sighed, settling back onto the velvet sofa beside Vera Quinn. She stopped texting. Vera raised an eyebrow, swirling her drink. You told her you were busy. She should understand that a man like you has responsibilities. Chase smirked, completely unaware of the storm he'd set in motion. She'll get over it. Lena always does. But his phone buzzed again, this time not with Lena's name. A notification. A bank alert. Chase frowned. Access attempt denied. Authentication requested. Vera leaned in. What's that about? Nothing, he muttered, although annoyance crept into his voice. Lena probably tried to look at the accounts again. She knows she's not supposed to. Vera's smile sharpened. You mean the accounts with her name on them? Chase stiffened. You don't know anything about that. But Vera did know. She knew far more than she ever revealed. Not because Chase told her he wasn't smart enough for caution, but because Vera always investigated her lovers the moment they became useful. She had screenshots, recordings, and photos ready to deploy the moment a relationship stopped benefiting her. Still, she tucked the information away like a blade in her purse. Chase's phone buzzed again. This time, he did look concerned. Noah's school account. Emergency contact unreachable. Hospital attempts, no answer. Vera's painted smile faltered slightly. Why would the hospital try to call you? Chase's stomach dropped just a little. Probably a mistake. Another message. Your spouse has left shared residence. Unable to deliver package. Chase shot up from the couch. She left the apartment? He snapped. Vera blinked. And you're surprised? She never leaves without telling me. Vera's voice turned mocking. Maybe she finally realized you're not the prize you think you are. He grabbed his coat. I'm going home. To what? She said, laughing lightly. An empty apartment? Chase froze at the door. For the first time all night, he felt something close to fear. Women like her don't just leave, he muttered. She has no money, no friends, no place to go. Vera tilted her head, studying him with cool amusement. Maybe you've underestimated her. Chase didn't reply. He stormed out, slamming the penthouse door behind him. The elevator ride felt endless. The air felt cold. And for reasons he couldn't explain, guilt crept into his chest. When he reached the apartment, the lights were off. The nursery door was open and empty. Lena's coat was gone. Noah's favorite blanket missing. For a man who believed he controlled everything, the silence was terrifying. Chase Marlowe had finally realized. His wife wasn't waiting anymore. She was gone. By the time dawn crept over Manhattan, painting the skyline in muted gold, the hospital had quieted. The chaos of the night had faded into soft footsteps and distant paging announcements. Lena sat beside Noah's bed, her fingers gently brushing his arm as he slept peacefully under warm blankets. Mason returned with a cup of hot tea and set it beside her. You should drink something, he said softly. She nodded, though she barely felt present. The weight of the night still sat heavy on her chest. Mason pulled up a chair. I spoke with the respiratory team. Noah's responding well. A few hours of monitoring, and he'll be okay. Relief washed over her again, this time deeper, steadier. For a moment, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Then Mason said, Lena, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me. She tensed. Okay. The letter. The property in Vermont. His voice stayed gentle, but his gaze was firm. Does Chase know about it? Her breath caught. The question struck a nerve she didn't expect. No, she whispered. He doesn't. He thinks I have nothing. He made sure of that. What do you mean? She hesitated, then the truth poured out. Chase controls everything. My bank card, my phone, my passwords, even my schedule. He always said it was for my own good, so I wouldn't have to stress about anything. She let out a shaky breath. But really, it kept me dependent. Trapped. End quote. Mason's expression hardened not with judgment toward her, but with anger toward the man who built her cage. That's not protection, Lena, he said quietly. That's control and abuse. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said it so plainly. He'd get mad if I asked about our finances, she continued. And when things went wrong for him at work, he blamed me. Said I wasn't supportive enough. Said I made him look weak. Her voice wavered. I believed him. For years. Mason leaned forward. Lena, listen to me. His tone softened, anchoring her. What he did to you is not love, it's manipulation. And tonight, leaving you and Noah in the cold, that's neglect, that's dangerous, and it's something courts take very seriously. Her breath hitched. She wasn't ready to think about courts, custody battles, lawyers, but she also knew Mason wasn't exaggerating. Do you think he'll come looking for us? She whispered. Yes, Mason said without hesitation. He will. Not because he cares, but because he hates losing control. He paused. And because he cannot afford a scandal. A cold realization chilled her bones. If he finds out about the Vermont property, she murmured. He can't, Mason said firmly. Not if you protect yourself. That land might be the first real leverage you've had in years. Before she could answer, Noah stirred in his sleep. Lena reached for him instinctively. Mason stood. You're not alone anymore, he said softly. I'll help you through this. Whatever comes next. And for the first time, Lena believed him. By late morning, snow had stopped falling, leaving Manhattan wrapped in a quiet white blanket. The hospital discharged Noah with medication and strict instructions to keep him warm for the next 48 hours. Lena carried him carefully through the lobby, his small body bundled in a blanket Mason had brought from his car. Where will you go now? Mason asked as he walked beside her. The question hit hard not because she hadn't considered it, but because she had, and every answer terrified her. She had no home she could safely return to, no money, no family left to call. I don't know, she admitted. I can't go back to the apartment. Chase will be furious. And if he sees me with Noah, I don't know what he'll do. Mason nodded, not with judgment but with quiet understanding. Then you're not going back. Her breath trembled. I don't have anywhere else. End quote. You do now, he said simply. He led her outside to the SUV, opened the door for her, and helped her settle Noah into the back seat. The cold nipped at her cheeks as she watched him walk around to the driver's side. Where are we going? She asked once he started the engine. To a friend's place, Mason said. She's a lawyer. She owns a spare apartment on the Upper West Side. She's out of town for the holidays, and she offered it to anyone who might need it. Lena blinked, stunned. Mason, you didn't have to go through all this trouble. His gaze flicked toward her. Lena, you walked through a snowstorm with your child because you had no one else. Let me be someone who helps. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. The drive to the Upper West Side was calmer than the frantic trip to the hospital. The Christmas crowds were out, lights twinkling on every corner, children laughing as they dragged sleds through slush. It felt surreal, like the entire city was celebrating while her world hung in pieces. When they reached the building, Mason helped carry Noah up the stairs. The apartment inside was small but warm, with soft beige walls and a couch covered in knitted blankets. A single lamp glowed near the window, making the space feel unexpectedly safe. This is beautiful, Lena whispered. It's yours for now, Mason said. No one knows you're here. You can rest. It's for Menagy. She lowered Noah onto the couch and kissed his forehead. The exhaustion of the past 24 hours finally caught up to her, the cold, the fear, the heartbreak crashing in all at once. Then Mason held out something she didn't expect. Her purse, her ID, a new prepaid phone. I picked these up from the hospital lost and found box. They keep emergency items for patients who can't wait for replacements. He smiled lightly. You'll need a way to stay connected on your own. Boredom. Lena took the phone slowly, overwhelmed. Mason, why are you doing all this for us? He met her gaze, steady and unwavering. Because someone should have been there for you long before tonight. And because I'm not going to let you face any of this alone. For the first time in years, Lena exhaled without fear. Chase Marlowe hadn't slept. Not because he worried about Lena and Noah, but because his world, the world he controlled with an iron fist, was suddenly full of cracks. His apartment felt wrong the moment he walked in. Too quiet, too still, too empty. He tore through the rooms, opening closets, checking drawers, calling out their names not out of love, but out of disbelief that someone he considered powerless had slipped through his fingers. "Lena, Noah," he shouted, voice echoing off the high ceilings. No one answered. His anger rose like a fever. She left him. She actually left him. And worse, she did it without permission. He grabbed his phone and dialed her. Straight to voicemail. "Are you kidding me?" he snapped. He tried again. Nothing. Then came the surge of fear he didn't want to acknowledge. What if she talked to someone? What if she told someone about the accounts, about the money he borrowed in her name? No, she wouldn't. She was too timid, too dependent, too naive. Except, she wasn't here anymore. Chase paced the living room, tugging at his hair. He needed to find her. Fast. He called Lena's best friend from years ago, a woman she hadn't spoken to since the wedding. No answer. He called her old job. Voicemail. He checked the building cameras. Footage showed Lena leaving with Noah in her arms, heading into the storm without looking back. A knot twisted in his chest. Not guilt. Fear. But then his phone buzzed. "Vera, are you home? You left without saying goodbye?" He ignored her. Another message appeared. "Vera, you should check the news. People are talking." What the hell? He opened the link. A gossip page had posted a photo snapped from the plaza's bar window, Chase and Vera standing close, champagne in hand. Someone captioned it, "Christmas lovers?" Chase cursed under his breath. This was bad. Really bad. If investors saw this, if clients saw this. His phone buzzed again. This time, from his head of PR. "We need to talk as soon as possible. Your family man image is breaking." Chase's stomach dropped. No, no, no. This was supposed to be discreet, he muttered. Then another blow landed. A notification from Noah's school app. "Emergency contact, unreachable. Hospital reached out, please respond." He froze. Hospital? The word punched the air out of him. Was Noah hurt? Was Lena hurt? He dialed the hospital's main line, but they couldn't share patient information. Privacy laws. They told him someone with his number had been contacted earlier and had not answered. He slammed the phone down. She took the kid to a hospital? Why? Did something happen? Why didn't she call me? Then reality crashed in. Because she couldn't. Because he locked her out of her own phone. A chill crawled up his spine. For the first time, he realized Lena might not just be gone. She might be done with him. And if she talked to someone, anyone, about his secrets, his entire life could burn. Chase grabbed his keys. He wasn't worried about his wife. He was worried about losing control. The apartment Mason secured for Lena felt like a fragile sanctuary, warm, quiet, and tucked far above the relentless noise of Manhattan. After settling Noah into the bedroom with a humidifier gently humming beside him, Lena finally exhaled. For the first time in years, she wasn't being watched. She wasn't being timed. She wasn't being measured for how quickly she responded to Chase's demands. But peace didn't last long. While searching her purse for Noah's medication, Lena found something she'd forgotten. She still had a small zippered pouch. Chase insisted she use for important documents. He claimed it was to keep her organized. In truth, it kept her from looking too closely. Her breath caught as she pulled out a stack of papers, crumpled, stamped, some partially torn. She wasn't expecting anything dangerous, but as she flipped through the documents, the color drained from her face. Her name, her signature, her social security number, all attached to contracts she had never seen before. "Borrower authorization," she whispered. Mason, who had been cleaning up dishes in the kitchen, heard the tremor in her voice. "Lena?" he said, stepping closer. "What is that?" I don't know." Her voice cracked. "These papers, they say I took out a loan. A huge one, but I never signed anything." Mason took the documents gently from her hands. As he skimmed each page, his expression tightened with every line he read. "Lena," he said carefully, "these aren't just personal papers. These are financial contracts. High interest. And the signatures?" He held one page up to the light. "They're forged." Her heart stopped. "Chase," she whispered. "There's no one else who could have done this," Mason said. "And if these were filed with the bank, it means he used your identity to take out money illegally." Her knees weakened. She sank onto the couch, clutching a throw pillow to keep her hands from shaking. "He said he was stressed," she murmured. "He said business was slow. I thought he meant normal business problems. I didn't know he'd drag me into anything like this." Mason knelt in front of her, his voice firm but reassuring. "Lena, listen to me. This is serious, but it's also leverage. Courts don't look kindly on spouses who commit fraud, especially when it endangers their partner." "Lever? I don't want leverage," she whispered. "I want to protect Noah." "And you will," Mason said. "But you can't protect him if Chase holds all the power. These documents shift the balance." Her breath shuddered. "If Chase finds out I have these—" "He won't," Mason said quickly. "Not until you're ready. Not until you have legal protection." As if summoned by the fear settling into her bones, Lena's prepaid phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Then a voicemail alert. Lena pressed play. Chase's voice spilled through the speaker, sharp, frantic, cold. "Lena, answer your phone. I know you're somewhere in the city. We need to talk before this gets worse." Her blood froze. This wasn't a husband calling. It was a man realizing the one thing he feared most: losing control. The voicemail ended, leaving the apartment in a heavy, suffocating silence. Lena stared at the phone as if it might ring again, as if Chase might suddenly burst through the door even though she knew he had no idea where she was. Still, fear settled deep into her chest. Mason watched her carefully. "Don't listen to that message alone," he said softly. "Let me hear the next one with you." Another vibration. Another voicemail. She didn't press play this time. Instead, she whispered, "He sounds different." "Different how?" Mason asked. "Scared," she said. "But not about us. About himself. Like he's afraid something's slipping out of his hands." She swallowed. "And that's when he's the most dangerous." Mason took the phone gently from her fingers and set it aside. "Lena, focus on what's in front of you. You and Noah are safe right now. That's what matters." Safe. The word felt fragile, but it was something. Mason stood and walked to the small dining table, pulling out his laptop and a worn leather folder. "We need to catalog everything you found. Photos, documents, anything that shows Chase forging your signature." Lena hesitated. "Won't that make him angrier?" "Probably," Mason said honestly, "but his anger isn't the point anymore. Your protection is." He opened the folder and showed her the embossed logo. A law firm she recognized from news stories. One that handled high-profile domestic cases, fraud investigations, and custody disputes. Her heart jumped. "I can't afford that." "How's Bing?" "You're not paying anything," Mason said. My best friend works for this firm. I already called him. He said he'll take your case pro bono until the investigation is stable." Lena stared at him, stunned. "Why would he do that? He doesn't even know me." "He doesn't have to know you," Mason said. "He knows me. And he trusts my judgment." Emotion rose in her throat so quickly she had to blink it back. "Mason, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said simply. "Just let me help." They spent the next 30 minutes sorting through the documents. Every forged signature, every date that didn't match, every slip that showed Chase's panic bleeding through his attempt at control. Mason photographed everything, uploading the files to a secured drive. Then he paused. "There's something else we should look at." He nodded toward the deed to the Vermont property lying on the coffee table. "That land," Mason said quietly, "could change everything." "Example?" "I still don't understand," Lena confessed. "Why would my mother leave something like that for me?" Mason hesitated, then opened his laptop and typed quickly. "Because this isn't just a piece of land, Lena. It's right next to a site proposed for a renewable energy expansion. If the deal goes through—" He turned the screen toward her. "It could be worth more than you think." "How much more?" she whispered. He held her gaze. "Enough to give you an entirely new life. Enough to make sure Chase never has leverage over you again." Before she could absorb the weight of those words, her phone buzzed again. This time, a text. "I'm coming to find you. We're not done. Chase." Mason read the fear in her eyes. "Lena," he said firmly, "he's losing control, not gaining it, and we're going to stay ahead of him, I promise." For the first time, the fear didn't swallow her whole. Because someone finally stood between her and the storm. By evening, the city below the apartment had shifted into its usual holiday shimmer: gold lights on brownstones, wreaths on iron railings, and the faint echo of carolers drifting through the streets. Inside, however, Lena felt none of the warmth Manhattan offered. Every shadow seemed sharper. Every sound made her flinch. Noah was finally asleep in the bedroom, wrapped in soft blankets and breathing steadily. Lena checked on him twice, then a third time, just to reassure herself he was safe. Mason noticed her pacing. "You're waiting for something," he said gently. She nodded. "I can feel it. Chase isn't the type to sit quietly. He'll come for us." "He won't find you," Mason said. "He doesn't know this address. He doesn't know who I called, and he definitely doesn't know you have evidence that could bury him." "I don't want to bury him," she whispered. "I just want peace. I want freedom." Mason's expression softened. "And that's exactly why he can't have you back." "And Reshin." And 140 tended. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again, a new text. Her breath trembled as she read it. "Where are you taking my son? You're making a mistake. Come home now." She showed Mason. He read the message, jaw tightening. "He's escalating." Lena sank onto the couch, holding her hands together to stop their trembling. "What if he calls the police and claims I kidnapped Noah?" "He won't," Mason said. "He knows he'd be exposing his own neglect. And even if he tries, you have hospital records proving you brought Noah in during an emergency." Lena closed her eyes. "Mason, he's not going to stop." "No," Mason agreed. "But we're going to control the next move, not him." He stood and walked to the door, checking the locks again even though he'd done it twice already. His protective instinct wasn't just medical, it was personal. And that scared her in a different way. She didn't want to rely on anyone. But she didn't know how to do this alone. Mason returned to her side. "I'm calling Ethan," he said, referring to the lawyer friend. "You'll have legal advice before midnight." She nodded, grateful. But at that moment, a sudden sound echoed from the hallway outside. A heavy knock, followed by another. Louder. Lena froze. Mason exchanged a glance with her. "Stay here." "No," she whispered, terrified. "Don't open it. It's for Miss Ed." He approached the door anyway, careful and silent, looking through the peephole. His shoulders stiffened. "What is it?" Lena whispered. Mason turned, voice low and controlled. "It's Chase." Her heart slammed into her ribs. Another thunderous knock rattled the door. "Lena," Chase shouted from the hallway. "I know you're in there. Open the door or I will." Mason stepped between Lena and the entrance, protective and steady, blocking her from view. "You're not opening that," he said firmly. The doorknob shook violently. "Lena, this is your last warning." Tears welled in her eyes as she held Noah's bedroom door, terrified he'd wake up. Mason placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "He doesn't get to threaten you anymore." But outside, Chase pounded on. A man desperate to regain control. A man about to lose far more than he realized. The pounding on the door grew harder, each blow sending vibrations through the apartment walls. Lena flinched with every strike, instinctively stepping in front of Noah's bedroom door, even though he slept behind it. Mason stood motionless near the entrance, shoulders squared, ready to stop Chase from forcing his way in. "Lena!" Chase shouted again, voice cracking under the weight of panic and rage. "Open this door right now!" But before Mason could speak, another sound filled the hallway outside. A woman's voice, sharp, mocking, impossibly familiar. "Well, well," the voice drawled. "If it isn't the loving family man." Mason peeked through the peephole again, and stiffened. "What is it?" Lena whispered. He exhaled slowly. "It's Vera." Lena's stomach dropped. Outside, Vera Quinn stood in a fur-trimmed coat, arms crossed, phone held high like a weapon. Her smile was venomous, the kind only a woman scorned could summon. Chase hissed at her. "What the hell are you doing here? How did you even find—" "Oh, don't flatter yourself," Vera cut in. "I tracked your phone. You left it in the Uber, genius. And guess what the driver found?" She dangled the phone mockingly. "Your messages. Your emails. Everything." Chase lunged for the phone, but Vera stepped back. "Aha. You don't get to snatch things anymore. That's your wife's job, right? Or was?" "Give it back," he snapped. "No," she said simply. "Because I'm done being the accessory in your little double life." Lena and Mason exchanged a stunned look. "What does she want?" Lena whispered. Mason shook his head. "With people like her? Chaos." Vera continued, voice ringing down the hallway. "Do you know what's funny, Chase? You promised me a PR boost. You promised access to your connections. But instead," she laughed sharply. "Instead, your entire empire is about to collapse, and I'm the one who gets to push it over." Chase grabbed her arm. "Stop it. You don't know what you're messing with." "Oh, I do," she said sweetly. "I have your loan records, the forged signatures, the fake emails. And I already sent copies to a few journalists I know." Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. He forged her name. And now, Vera was exposing it. Chase's face turned pale. "You psycho. Careful," she warned, pointing her phone at him. "You lay one finger on me and this entire recording goes live." He stopped dead. Inside the apartment, Mason murmured, "This is unexpected, but incredibly helpful." Then came the final blow. Vera raised her voice, shouting for the entire floor to hear. "Your husband used his wife's identity to take out illegal loans. He's drowning in debt, he's cheating, and he's blaming everyone but himself." Chase froze, horror flooding his face. Neighbors opened doors, phones appeared, cameras clicked. And just like that, the private nightmare he created became a public spectacle. Mason turned to Lena. "This," he said quietly, "just changed everything in your favor. I haven't Sie." Lena didn't feel triumph. Not yet. But for the first time, she felt the balance of power tip right out of Chase Marlowe's hands. The hallway outside the apartment had transformed into a battleground, one Chase never expected to fight in. The neighbors who usually avoided eye contact now stood with their phone cameras raised, capturing every second as if watching a scandalous holiday movie unfold. Vera's words echoed through the corridor like sharp blades. "Illegal loans," she shouted again. "Forged signatures. He used his wife's identity because he couldn't qualify on his own." Chase spun toward her, face red with panic. "Shut up, you don't know what you're saying." "Oh, sweetheart," she purred. "I know exactly what I'm saying, and so will everyone else once this goes online." She pressed a button on her screen, and a preview of a video popped up, Chase ranting drunkenly about using Lena's clean record and do whatever it takes to save my company. And in front of her one. Neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Chase lunged for her again, but two men from down the hall stepped between them, arms folded. "Back off, man," one of them warned. "No one's touching her." Inside the apartment, Lena watched from behind the chain lock, heart racing. She didn't want to see Chase humiliated. Part of her still trembled at the sight of his anger, but another part, a deeper, quieter part, felt something else. Validation. For years she had questioned her instincts, her sanity, her worth. Chase had convinced her that she was overreacting, ungrateful, dramatic, but now the truth was shouting through the hallway for the entire world to hear. Mason stood beside her, voice low. "Lena, this footage alone could sway a custody hearing." "I don't want revenge," she whispered. "I just want Noah to be safe. And that," Mason said, "is exactly why you deserve to win." To Denver. Out in the hall, Chase realized the cameras weren't going away. His anger cracked into desperation. "Lena," he shouted, slamming a fist against the door. "Are you listening? This is your fault. If you hadn't walked out..." Mason unlatched the chain lock and opened the door just enough to step into the doorway. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "You need to leave." Chase sneered. "This doesn't concern you." Mason didn't flinch. "It does when a child is involved. And when a woman you hurt is finally asking for help." The words stung more than any punch. Chase tried to push forward, but Mason blocked him easily. "Don't take another step." For a moment, Chase looked ready to swing. His fists twitched, his eyes narrowed. Then Vera lifted her phone again, smirking. "Go ahead, Chase. Hit him. Give me something even better to post." He froze. Cornered, exposed, powerless. Slowly, defeated, he stepped back. "Lena," he rasped, "you can't do this. You can't take my son." Lena stepped forward, staying behind Mason but close enough for Chase to see her clearly. "I'm not taking anything," she said quietly. "I'm protecting him." The neighbors murmured in approval. And for the first time, Chase realized no one believed him anymore. 2 days later, the holiday lights outside the Manhattan family court glowed softly through the large windows, casting warm reflections onto the polished floors. But inside the courtroom, the air felt colder than the December wind. Custody hearings were rarely gentle, especially when one side fought with desperation and the other fought with fear. Lena sat at the petitioner's table, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore a simple navy sweater and the only pair of dress shoes she still owned. Noah sat with a child advocate in the hallway, playing quietly with a small toy truck Mason had bought him. Her stomach twisted every time she thought of him waiting outside, unaware of how life-changing this day could be. Mason sat behind her, offering quiet strength just by being present. At the opposing table sat Chase, jaw set, shoulders tense, eyes burning with the need to win. Beside him, two expensive attorneys flipped through binders thick enough to bury the truth if necessary. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, adjusted her glasses. "We are here to determine temporary custody and assess immediate safety concerns. Mrs. Marlowe, please stand." Lena rose, knees trembling. "You left the residence with your child on Christmas Eve. Explain why." Her mouth went dry, but she forced the words out. "Your Honor, my husband left us in a snowstorm. My son had trouble breathing. I couldn't access my phone because he locked me out of it. I had no way to call for help. I made the decision to leave for my child's safety." "And Frez," Chase scoffed loudly. His attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm. The judge turned her gaze to him. "Mr. Marlowe, you'll have your turn." When the questioning shifted to Chase, his attorney launched into a performance. "Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman. He was attending a professional gathering that evening. Mrs. Marlowe has a history of emotional instability." "That's a lie," Lena whispered. But the judge raised a hand. "We'll hear all sides." End quote. The attorney continued. "She left the residence without notifying him, creating a dangerous situation." Mason leaned forward, whispering, "He's trying to frame you as irresponsible. Stay calm." Then the judge said, "Mr. Ellis, I see your name listed as a witness. Please approach." Lena's breath caught as Mason walked to the stand. He took the oath, then met the judge's eyes with steady professionalism. "Dr. Ellis," the judge said, "explain your involvement." "Thank you for watching." "I'm the physician who treated Noah on Christmas Eve," he said. "He arrived with hypothermia symptoms and difficulty breathing. Mrs. Marlowe acted quickly and appropriately. Had she delayed, his condition could have worsened." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Chase looked rattled. And, Mason continued, "I witnessed evidence indicating significant financial control and emotional manipulation by Mr. Marlowe." Chase shot to his feet. "That's not true. She's lying." "He's lying." Thanks for watching." The judge slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Marlowe." Silence fell. Then the judge spoke the words that hit like thunder. "Temporary full custody is granted to Mrs. Marlowe. Mr. Marlowe is to have supervised visitation only, pending investigation." Lena's breath shook relief, flooding her so fast tears spilled down her cheeks. For the first time, the truth wasn't just spoken. It mattered. While Lena held Noah close outside the courthouse, trying to steady her breathing after the judge's ruling, Chase Marlowe was living a very different reality. He stormed out the courtroom doors, his attorneys scrambling to keep up, shouting legal jargon he no longer heard. The hallway buzzed with murmured shock, law clerks whispering, attorneys glancing sideways, spectators exchanging knowing looks. Chase ignored them all. "She can't do this," he hissed. "A temporary ruling doesn't mean anything. I'll overturn it." But even as the words left his mouth, his voice cracked. His head attorney cleared his throat. "Mr. Marlowe, there's more we need to discuss." Chase spun around, eyes blazing. "What now?" The attorney lowered his voice. "The forged loan documents? The bank has flagged them. We received notice this morning. There will likely be an investigation." "What investigation?" Chase snapped. "It's my wife, my household. It's not a crime to use." "It is a crime," the attorney interrupted sharply, glancing around before dropping his voice. "Identity fraud, financial abuse, and given the domestic context, it's going to look very, very bad." Chase stumbled back a step. Then his phone buzzed. He snatched it from his pocket, expecting a message from his PR team. Instead, breaking news. Manhattan businessman under scrutiny for alleged identity fraud. A blurry photo of him and Vera at the plaza, plastered beneath the headline. He scrolled. A new viral video, posted by Vera. All it took was 10 seconds to destroy his image. "I had to use Lena's name. It's cleaner. My credit's trashed. She'll never know." Chase felt the blood drain from his face. No, she wouldn't. But she did. Vera Quinn had set the match, and the world was watching the fire burn. His attorney swallowed hard. "We need to get ahead of the narrative. You should release a statement." "I'm not releasing anything," Chase barked. "Call Vera. Now. We tried, the attorney said. She's not responding. Her agent issued a statement saying she's cooperating fully with investigators. Chase nearly dropped his phone. His world, crafted so carefully, maintained through control and intimidation, was cracking apart like thin ice beneath him. He turned and caught sight of Lena through the courthouse doors. She stood at the curb with Noah in her arms, Mason at her side. She looked tired, shaken, but steady, stronger than he had ever allowed her to be. Chase pushed toward her, ignoring his attorney's warnings. "Lena," he called, "we need to talk." Lena stiffened. Mason stepped between them, voice calm but firm. "You've caused enough damage today." Chase ignored him. "Lena, tell them it's not true. Tell them you're not pressing charges. You owe me that." She stared at him, stunned by the audacity. "Owe you?" she repeated softly. Her voice didn't shake. "Not anymore. I owe Noah safety. I owe myself peace. But I don't owe you anything." Mason gently guided her and Noah toward the waiting car. Chase reached out, but no one let him close. Not the law. Not the court. Not the truth that had finally come to light. And as the car pulled away, he realized something he had never felt before. He wasn't losing control. He had already lost it. The courtroom reconvened 2 days later for the financial hearing, an emergency session called after the bank formally reported irregularities in the loan documents tied to Lena's name. Snow fell steadily outside the tall courthouse windows, muffling the city, as if Manhattan itself were holding its breath. Lena sat at the petitioner's table once again, hands folded tightly in her lap. Mason sat behind her for support, and her attorney, Ethan Ross, sharp, composed, and devastatingly calm, arranged neatly labeled folders before the judge. Across the room, Chase looked like a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked, his eyes bloodshot from nights spent extinguishing fires he had started long before Christmas Eve. His attorneys whispered frantically to him, but nothing could mask the dread etched into his face. The judge lifted the first document from the stack. "Mr. Marlowe," she began, "we have reviewed the contract signed using your wife's identity. Mrs. Marlowe states she did not authorize these transactions." Chase stood, desperate and sweating. "Your Honor, she's confused. Those were household decisions. She signed them." Ethan rose. "Permission to present Exhibit A." The judge nodded. A screen lit up at the front of the courtroom. A video. Vera's recording. Chase's voice. "I had to use Lena's clean record. My credit's trashed. She'll never know." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Chase's attorney closed his eyes like he'd just watched his entire career go up in flames. Chase lunged forward. "That was taken out of context. That woman is unstable." The judge raised a hand sharply. "Sit down, Mr. Marlowe." He froze. Ethan stepped forward. "Further evidence shows Mr. Marlowe changed Mrs. Marlowe's passwords, restricted her financial access, and locked her out of her own phone. This demonstrates intentional isolation and financial abuse." Lena stared at the table. Hearing her suffering described in legal terms felt surreal, like someone else's story. But every word was true. The judge turned to Lena. "Mrs. Marlowe, did you consent to any of these loans?" "No, Your Honor," she said quietly. "I didn't even know they existed." The judge made several notes. Then came the final blow. Given the fraudulent activity, the manipulation demonstrated, and the immediate risk posed to Mrs. Marlowe and her child, this court finds Mr. Marlowe solely responsible for the outstanding debts. Furthermore, Chase's breath hitched. An official fraud investigation will proceed. Until its conclusion, Mr. Marlowe's accounts will be frozen. He collapsed back into his chair. Frozen accounts. Debt in his name only. Criminal investigation pending. Supervised visitation. His life, his image, his control, shattered in seconds. But the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, Mrs. Marlowe is granted temporary exclusive use of the marital residence. Chase jerked upright. "What? You can't." "She left. She left under duress," the judge corrected. "And the court will not return her to unsafe circumstances." Lena swallowed hard, tears burning her eyes. She never imagined she'd hear those words spoken for her. The judge lifted the final page. "This court's priority is the safety and stability of the child and the victimized spouse. Mr. Marlowe, you have violated both." A single, clean strike of the gavel ended the hearing, and ended Chase Marlowe's reign. The first night back in the marital apartment felt strange, like walking through a museum of a life she no longer belonged to. The judge had granted her full access, but that didn't erase the memories embedded in the walls, the arguments whispered behind closed doors, the constant tension, the nights she cried silently while Chase slept beside her. But this time, she didn't come back alone. Noah toddled into his old room, clutching his blanket and looking around with wide eyes. Lena knelt beside him. "Is it okay if we stay here for a little while?" she asked softly. He nodded sleepily. "As long as you're here, Mommy." Her heart tightened warmly this time. Mason carried in a box of groceries, placing them gently on the counter. "I stocked up on basics," he said, "and a few things Noah likes." "You didn't have to, Lena," he said with a small smile. "I know you're not used to people helping without an agenda. But let me be the exception." And Grace. The words landed deeper than he knew. For years, help had been conditional. Perform, obey, please. Now, help came without strings, and she almost didn't know how to accept it. When Noah drifted off to sleep, Lena and Mason sat in the living room. The dim lamp cast warm shadows, softening the sharp edges of the space. "I need to tell you something," Lena said quietly, fingers tracing the rim of her tea mug. "About the Vermont property." Mason leaned forward. "I'm listening. Help her. I don't understand why my mother left it to me, or what I'm supposed to do with it. I barely knew how to manage a joint bank account with Chase, let alone land." "You don't have to know everything right now," Mason said gently. "But I spoke to a colleague today. That area is part of the proposed renewable energy expansion. If the deal finalizes, the land value will skyrocket." Lena blinked. "Skyrocket? How much are we talking?" Mason hesitated before answering. "Potentially hundreds of thousands." Her breath caught. "That can't be real." "It is," Mason assured her. "You have something Chase never expected, a future he can't control." She looked around the apartment, the expensive furniture Chase insisted on, the curated decor meant to impress visitors, the sterile perfection. None of it felt like hers. But the Vermont land? That felt like a door waiting to be opened. Suddenly, tears welled in her eyes, not from pain this time, but from something gentler. Hope. Possibility. A future forming quietly on the horizon. Mason reached across the couch and touched her hand lightly. "You're allowed to start over, Lena." She swallowed. "I don't know where to begin." "How about with dinner?" he said softly. "One step at a time." She laughed, small, surprised, genuine. And for the first time in years, Lena realized she wasn't rebuilding a life from ruins. She was building a life that finally belonged to her. The next week passed in a rhythm Lena had never known, before quiet mornings with Noah's laughter echoing down the hallway. Simple breakfasts she cooked without fear of being criticized, and evenings where the apartment felt lighter, as if the absence of Chase's anger had opened the windows to let warmth in. But on Thursday morning, everything shifted. A heavy knock echoed through the apartment. Lena froze, heart leaping straight into her throat. For a split second, she feared Chase had returned, defying the court order. She pulled Noah close, holding her breath. But when she cracked open the door, it wasn't Chase. Two federal investigators stood in the hallway, badges visible. "Mrs. Marlowe?" the taller agent asked. Lena nodded carefully. "We're here regarding the fraudulent loan activity connected to your name. We'd like to ask you a few questions." As word. Her pulse raced, but she straightened. "Of course. Please come in." Mason arrived minutes later. She'd texted him quietly and positioned himself beside her like a shield. The investigators were professional, respectful, thorough. They asked about her marriage, her financial access, the forged signature, the controlling behaviors. At one point, Lena's voice trembled. "I didn't know he was doing any of this. I just wanted to keep my family together." And 10. One of the investigators nodded sympathetically. "That's often how these situations begin. You were isolated, but the evidence is clear, and you'll be protected throughout this process." When they left, Lena stood in the silent apartment, leaning against the wall as relief washed over her. Mason touched her shoulder gently. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "But it feels so strange," she whispered. "For years, Chase made me believe no one would ever take my side. Now, strangers are fighting for me. Because the truth is finally visible," Mason said softly. "And because you deserve better." Later that evening, as snow drifted past the windows, Lena tucked Noah into bed. He smiled sleepily. Are we safe now, Mommy? She brushed his hair back. We're getting there. When she returned to the living room, Mason was waiting with a small envelope in his hand. What's that? Lena asked. A letter, he said. From the Vermont zoning office. I helped expedite a records request. Her stomach flipped. What does it say? He handed it to her gently. Lena unfolded the paper, scanning each line. Her breath caught. Mason, they want to meet with me. The energy project. They want to negotiate an offer for the land. Exactly, Mason said. They're interested, very interested. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from something she wasn't used to feeling. Opportunity. A real chance at a future not shaped by survival, but by choice. She sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. I can't believe this is happening. Mason sat beside her. Lena, look at me. She lifted her eyes. You survived something that was meant to break you. And now life is giving something back. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. The past wasn't holding her anymore, and the future quietly, steadily was reaching out its hand. The Vermont mountains glowed soft pink beneath the rising winter sun, a quiet beauty Lena had never experienced before. She stepped out of the small SUV, holding Noah's hand, their breath forming gentle clouds in the crisp morning air. For the first time in what felt like years, she inhaled without feeling her chest tighten. This is our land, she whispered, hardly believing it. Noah looked up at her with wide eyes. It's big, Mommy. It is, she said softly. Big enough for new beginnings. The meeting with the renewable energy representatives took place in a modest wooden office overlooking acres of untouched snow. The men across the table weren't cold or intimidating. They were respectful, patient, and surprisingly hopeful. Mrs. Marlowe, one of them explained, your land sits directly on the expansion site for our wind energy project. It's a critical component. We're prepared to negotiate a substantial purchase. I fanned each. It's the riddle. Lena exchanged a glance with Mason, supportive, calm, quietly proud. What does substantial mean? She asked, voice steady though her hands trembled slightly. The representative slid a paper across the table. The number on it made Lena's breath stop. It wasn't just enough to live. It was enough to rebuild. Enough to ensure Noah's future. Enough to finally be free. She blinked through tears. I need a moment. And woed. Outside, she leaned against the railing overlooking the snowy valley, overwhelmed not by fear, but by possibility. Mason joined her quietly. This changes everything, he said. She nodded. I never imagined life could look like this. You earned it, he replied gently. Every step you took to protect yourself and your son led you here. When they returned inside, Lena signed the preliminary agreement. It felt like closing the door on a life she never wished to return to. Back in Manhattan, the next blow fell for Chase publicly and decisively. His company issued a statement distancing themselves. Investors withdrew. Charges were officially filed. The world he once built through manipulation and borrowed power finally collapsed under the weight of truth. But Lena didn't celebrate his downfall. She celebrated her freedom. That evening, in the warm glow of her Vermont cabin rental, she put Noah to bed with soft blankets and sang him a lullaby she hadn't sung in years. When she stepped outside, snowflakes drifted lazily, settling on her hair and eyelashes. Mason followed her out, hands tucked in his jacket pockets. Do you ever think about what comes next? He asked softly. Lena turned to him, really looked at him. The man who stood by her when she was at her lowest. The man who believed her before she believed herself. I do now, she whispered. He took a slow step closer, not imposing, not demanding, just present, offering warmth in the cold. You don't have to rush into anything, Mason murmured. But if someday you wanted... She placed a hand on his chest, stopping the words gently. I know, she said, and someday, I might. Snow fell softly around them, quiet and forgiving. For the first time, Lena Marlowe felt the weight of her past slip away, replaced by a peace she finally believed she deserved. So, the story has come to an end, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me at this moment, then something in Lena's journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, honest way. And maybe, as we sit here together, it's worth asking, why? Why did her pain, her courage, her quiet steps forward matter to you? Because in life, we all face moments when we must walk away from what hurts us, even when our legs are shaking. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Today, Lena found that strength, not all at once, not dramatically, but in small, trembling decisions that slowly open the door to a new life. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Healing doesn't come in a single moment. It comes in tiny steps, tiny truths, tiny acts of choosing ourselves again. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel seen or less alone, then stay with our little community here. Like, share, and subscribe so these stories can keep finding the people who need them most. And remember, you too deserve a life that doesn't hurt to live.
While he sipped champagne with his mistress on Christmas night, wrapped in warmth and luxury, his wife trudged through the snow with her child in her arms. Each step was a mix of heartbreak and determination as she carried the little one away from a home that had forgotten them. He laughed that evening, believing he had traded up, believing she would always wait. But by dawn, the consequences of his choices settled like frost on his soul. Neighbors whispered, friends turned cold, and the empty house he returned to felt harsher than any winter storm. Meanwhile, far from betrayal that broke her, his wife held their child close, choosing peace over pain. And as the snow continued to fall, it became clear that the real celebration wasn't his. It was hers, for finding the strength to walk away.